fight day and night to protect our rights.
We will fight day and night to protect our rights.
We will fight day and night to protect our rights.
Hi, my name is Farah from the Arab American Action Network, and our first speaker for today is Razan Khalil from the Arab American Action Network. Here she is.
Every 28 hours, an African American is killed by a police officer or a vigilante. Every day, law enforcement and private security target people of color for entrapment, interrogations, and searches without evidence of criminal activity based on perceived race, ethnicity, national origin, political beliefs, or religion. People have been pursued by informants and federal personnel within our communities. According to our survey, 1 out of 10 community members have been visited by the FBI, and 85% of them were asked by the FBI about their immigration status, political, or religious beliefs. For the past 4 years, the Arab American Action Network's youth program has led the campaign to end racial profiling. We have been fighting to put an end to the police killings, SARS, CVE, and informants within our communities. SARS stands for Suspicious Activity Reports. This is used to target specific people that law enforcement considers suspicious. It covers innocent acts, such as a person walking into a building and asking about their office hours, a person carrying binoculars, or a person taking pictures at a train station. Since the FBI decides what's suspicious, it can lead to an abuse of authority. In the current climate, it will lead to the targeting of Arabs and Muslims. Countering Violent Extremism, also known as CVE, is a new program that the FBI is unveiling that targets Arabs and Muslims. This program surveillances the community by targeting young people to allegedly stop them from joining terrorist groups. Why is our community being targeted while there are violent white nationalists shooting up churches like Dillon Roof in North Carolina, KKK violence like the rally in Anaheim, and here in Chicago, police killings of Paul O'Neill, Rakia Boyd, and Laquan McDonald, as well as the Torjat Holman Square black site. With all these examples of terrorism carried out by the police and white nationalists around the country and here in Chicago, why doesn't the FBI focus on that? Another issue in our community is the use of informants. Informants are civilians who work for the FBI by feeding them information on the people or organization that is being targeted. We have seen in the cases of Adel Dawood and Abdullah Al-Tanisi that undercover informants have been used to brainwash and encourage violent acts. Also, in the case of beloved community member, the late Muhammad Salah, informants infiltrate our community organizations and lie about activities of their members. The Arab American Action Network demands for these programs and methods to be terminated.
Yeah!
We are calling on FBI Special Agent in charge of the Chicago Division, Michael J. Anderson, to publicly announce an end to the use of SARS and informants, and that the Chicago FBI office will refuse to partake in any CVE programming. Thank you. Akia. Yes.
Great job, Razan. That was very moving. Our next speaker for today is Parrish Brown from the Bluest Light Collaborative.
All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Parrish Brown, and again, I'm with the Bluest Light Collaborative. The Bluest Light Collaborative, without doubt, endorses the demands put forward by the youth from the Arab American Action Network to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. We are a small rapid response team of young black organizers whose mission is to kill the Blue Lives Matters hate crime expansion ordinance sponsored by notorious 14th Ward Alderman Ed Burke and Chicago Council's Public Safety Committee. In line with a nationwide reactionary wave of legislation, we understand that the emerging Blue Lives Matter trend as a cynical, historic power grab to silence, to criminalize, to intimidate organizers, protesters, and everyday citizens who CPD and public services are supposed to protect. But will we be silenced? But will we be silenced?
No!
Whose community?
Our community!
Whose community?
Our community!
Whose city?
Our city!
Whose city?
Our city!
Chicago is currently at the height of a systematic police accountability crisis. The FOP Lodge 7, the state's attorney, the city law department, and ROM have all acted with impunity, resulting in a federal DOJ investigation. Cover-up after cover-up, settlement after settlement.
That ain't right.
At all. The backers of the ordinance are former cops. Alderman Ed Burke, boo. Alderman Willie Cochran of the 20th Ward. Alderman Talia Farrell of the 29th Ward. O'Shea of the 19th Ward. And the 44th World Alderman. CPD cannot be trusted to investigate hate incidents. Police are already privileged under the law. No legal path exists to charge an on-duty officer with a hate crime. Law enforcement and federal data tells us that there is no crisis of hate crimes upon police. The Nat Law Enforcement Officer and Badge of Life and Bureau of Labor Statistics all report that violence against police is at an all-time low. And while it was reported deaths of police violence like Rekia Boyd and Laquan McDonald is at a record high. In closing, don't buy the bluest lie. Please sign our petition, and together we can stop these legislative attacks on our communities and work together for liberation. Thank you.
Thank you, Parrish. Our next speaker is Hoda Cadivi from the Council on American-Islamic Relations.
Thank you. Before I begin, I just want to quickly acknowledge that we are on stolen land from the Potawatomi, Illinois, and Miami indigenous tribes that once lived on these prior to European colonization. Many of the same systems and structures that created and perpetuate our current climate of heightened Islamophobia are responsible also for silencing and hiding the indigenous people of this land. And as we know today, we are at a time of heightened Islamophobia. A time of Islamophobia in which the amount of clothes that a woman chooses to wear is somehow correlated with our levels of oppression, in which Muslims can be kicked off of airlines simply for doing math, in which Muslims can be shot and killed in Queens, New York for leaving a mosque. And this is the same climate of Islamophobia that renders our safety irrelevant. No, we are the security threats. Is it not strange that law enforcement and media outlets are never able to quite figure out why Muslims can be shot and killed execution style, but in under 24 hours are able to identify the intentions, motives, and family history of anyone who commits a crime with a Middle Eastern sounding name? Of course, they're all part of a larger political system whose imperialist and colonialist projects in the Middle East have created a refugee crisis it won't take responsibility for, whose prisons and quote-unquote security measures hold and torture our Palestinian siblings in jails and cages, whose militarized police force in the USA shoot black children 16 times, and whose hyper-surveillance of Arab and Muslim communities have not only correlated to increased physical and mental health problems among our youth, but also it has created a situation possible for a young Muslim woman named Itmat al-Matar to be tackled by several Chicago police officers unprovoked and unannounced, publicly strip searched, sexually assaulted, simply for trying to catch the red line to go home. So CARE Chicago proudly calls for an end to SARS, CVE, and all forms of racial discrimination. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Hoda. Our next speaker for tonight is going to be Adrian from the Chicago Alliance Against Racist and Political Oppression.
Good evening, everyone. My name's Adrian Harris, and I'm here on behalf of the Chicago Alliance, which is headed by Frank Chapman and Ted Pearson, whose history began in the Black Liberation Movement. here in Chicago began around the Free Angela Davis movement. I'm here on behalf of my mentors today to stand with the Arab American Action Network and their partnering organizations in demanding an end to racial profiling practices being carried out by our law enforcement. We're here for Mr. Anderson, right? Right? Okay. Mr. Anderson, he's well aware that no repercussions for the actions of the mentally unfit and or poorly trained civilian officers under his supervision, the ones assisting in the creation of his legacy, he's aware that, no repercussions for their actions. Sorry about that. I'm just a little bit nervous. He's aware that the methods of the department, he's aware that there are methods being used in the department that skew the data of the traffic stop data collections to meet the requirements proposed by the Senate, and they call that all in a day's work. He is completely aware that the members of the African American and Latinx communities are 2 times more likely to be threatened with a weapon by an officer, and those statistics remain unchanged despite the Racial Profiling Prevention Bill, the MICVA Challenge, and the Precious Blood Ministries program, which were implemented as platforms for those to be heard. For our Arab, Muslim, and Palestinian family, that statistic also indicates that they are 2 times more likely to be verbally and or physically assaulted by a mentally unfit or poorly trained civilian officer. They are 2 times more likely to be considered a criminal on their way home from, let's say, the FIB headquarters. As we all know, that there have been many government officials pulled over and questioned by fellow police officers because of their skin color, because their skin color raised suspicions. Maybe Mr. Anderson and his colleagues don't respond as passionately and urgent as the people because they don't wholly identify with this community. And maybe it's for more personal reasons, like the benefits that come along with their federal government checks. Whatever the reason, Whatever the reason, we now see the many ways in which our city fails to respond to reported misconduct stemming from their departments. As a resolution, a resolution should arise from within our own individual communities. We must remain active, vocal, and militant in our efforts of obtaining justice. When moving forward, we must find methods of coming together with our neighbors, aldermen, city officials, and demanding an all-civilian elected police accountability council, an entity within the communities that will at last have the people power to legally state we are not here to be messed over, we are not here to be fucked with. The minority population of this district, this province, this Grand Republic will not be profiled against while slaving in the system. We are unable to remain your humble, docile, and ignorant populace while being aware that we are watching our hometown slip further and further into a police state. The CPAC ordinance will be passed, and your department will have to find other outlets for its tyrannical behavior. Thank you all for listening. And we are going to get our justice. We're going to get our work.
Thank you, Adrian. And thank you, everyone, for coming. This is Mohammed Sankari and Nasreen here to answer any questions that the press may have.
We're just going to do a brief question and answer about the campaign or about any of the demands or the action today, if anyone has any from the press. Not all at once, hopefully.
What was the reaction to your request to meet?
So the question was, what was the reaction to our request to meet? Our request actually wasn't to meet. Our request was to end the programming that targets our communities right now. There have been a lot of meetings that the FBI has had with our community. It hasn't gotten us very far. And so we asked to go in. Zeke and India, Nasreen and myself asked to go in to speak to Agent Michael Anderson, and our request was denied. And they told us that we simply had to leave the letter inside the box, and then they ensured that it would get to him. But we're going to make sure that he saw that letter, and we'll be following up.
That's right.
What's the next step, assuming that the FBI is not often going to follow up on this?
Yeah, the next step, the question was, what's the next step, assuming that the FBI doesn't follow up? Well, we know where Michael Anderson works, and it's a public building under all intents and purposes, right? And so I can assume, or he can assume, that we'll probably be paying a few more visits, and we'll be trying to find a way to really reach out to him and make sure that our demands are met. So how has law enforcement policy changed, specifically targeting the Arab and Muslim communities of Chicagoland area, and how has it qualitatively affected our families? I'm going to actually let Nasreen talk extensively. We did a survey that extensively talks about this.
So our survey still reflects today's current day of situations between Arab and Muslim civilians with law enforcement. So 4 years ago in 2012, our youth led or created a survey to dismantle to 450 members of the Arab and Muslim community. And we've come to find drastic statistics. For example, 1 out of 10 community members have encountered an informant in the community. Community members are afraid to speak their political beliefs around law enforcement. Or if a community member has interacted with law enforcement, they faced hard situations such as divorce and financial strain. And these situations are continuing to happening with our community as well. So nothing has really changed, even with new policies are abrupt. The way law enforcement interacts with our community is still the same, and the surveillance is still going on. And with CVE and SARS, surveillance is taking even more drastic measures into our community and bringing even more fear. SARS and CVE. So CVE, counter-violent extremism. It's basically a program that the U.S. government and the DOJ have been doing. It's a way to surveillance Arab and Muslim community members through mosques, even through the public school system, trying to gather up information on, for example, children, adults, and trying to claim to prevent extremism. But basically what it does is just to gather data and to profile Arab and Muslims.
And I think that our young person who spoke first, Razan, did a very good job about talking about what does it really mean in this day and age to be focused on terrorism, in which we've seen many examples of terrorism in this country that are not coming from our communities, the Arab and broader Muslim communities, that are not coming from the African American or Latino immigrant communities, but are actually coming from white Americans and people who are allegedly here to protect and serve. Other questions? All right, thank you very much. We're going to pass it to Akia, wherever she disappeared to, and she'll be closing us out for the day.
Don't be scared. Get that mic.
You're good. I'll hold the mic. You just talking to this one.
Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Akia Brown. As this action comes to an end, we would like to express our gratitude to you all for coming out and supporting us. We would like to thank our allies and organizations that signed on to our letter: the American Friends Service Committee Chicago, Asada's Daughters, Black Lives Matter Chicago, the Bluest Lie Collaborative, Chicago Analysis Against Racist and Political Repression, Chicago Daisy Youth Rising, Council on American-Islamic Relations Chicago, Korean American Resources and Cultural Center, Students for the Justice and Palatine, DePaul University, Students for Justice and Palatine, Northwestern University. Thank you all for your never-ending support for our campaign. We shall not rest until our communities are safe from the law enforcement. We shall not rest until our people are safe from the police and FBI. Thank you.
What do we want? Justice. When do we want it?
Now!
What do we want?
Justice!
What do we want?
Now!